or of His kingdom on earth, on this earth, which will follow His return. We ought to long for the Lord's return, long for it speedily, awaiting the day the trumpet of God will sound. Lastly, this evening, we ought to be living for the Lord's return. Living for the Lord's return. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 14 says, "Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent, that ye may be found of Him in peace, without spot and blameless." Peter's talking about how we should live our lives in the light of the Lord's return. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 2 and 3, it says, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when He shall appear, we shall be like Him. For we shall see Him as He is. And every man that hath this hope in Him purifieth himself, even as He is pure." If you're looking and longing for the Lord's return, it'll influence and impact the life that you live. We don't know that He's coming this afternoon, but we don't know that He's not coming either. It ought to move us to live a life that is presentable to Him, to follow the commandments of God, to look closer at what Peter's talking about. We ought to do our best for Jesus. "Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent." The word diligent means to use speed, to make an effort, to be prompt or earnest, and in short, to do our best to live for Him, to await His coming. Every preacher, every teacher, every deacon, every singer, every choir member, every youth leader, every member of the church ought to give their best. Serving God and living for God is the most important thing that we will ever do. And we should always do our best to live a life that's presentable unto Him. We should not only do our best, but we ought to be our best for the Jesus. He says, Peter adds in verse 14, he adds, we should be without spot and blameless. To be without spot is to guard ourselves from a sinful life. To be on guard. To be suited up in the full armor of God, that we may be able to withstand the wiles of Satan. Wishing and hoping that our testimony would never be marred. It takes a lifetime to build a testimony for Christ. It takes just a few seconds to destroy it. Just a few seconds to destroy it. It's important that we try to build that testimony and keep building onto our testimony so that our lives may edify Christ. We should do nothing that would be displeasing to the Lord or His name or His cause, but we all find ourselves in those places that we're doing things that are displeasing to Him. That's why it's important that we pray and beg God to forgive us. In closing, the Lord is coming. It's not going to be long. We should look and long for His return. And I want to give you a familiar Christmas poem from an unknown author of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." It says, "'Twas the night before Jesus came, and all through the house not a creature was praying, not one in the house. Their Bibles were laying on the shelf without care, in hopes that Jesus would not come there. The children were dressing to crawl into bed, not once ever kneeling or bowing ahead. A mom in a rocker with baby on her lap was watching the late show while I took a nap. When out of the east there arose such a clatter, I sprang to my feet to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the slash. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but angels proclaiming that Jesus was here. With a light like the sun sending forth a bright ray, I knew in a moment that this must be the day. The light of his face made me cover my head. It was Jesus returning just like he had said. And though I possessed worldly wisdom and wealth, I cried when I saw him in spite of myself. In the book of life which he held in his hand was written the name of every saved man. He spoke not a word as he searched for my name. When he said, "It is not here," my head hung in shame.